Welcome in, everyone. If you guys already have questions, feel free to pile them into the Q&A. We'll go ahead and get started in about just a minute. Wait for a couple more attendees to join. All right, everyone, welcome in. Again, if we have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. We'll go ahead and get started right now. Looks like we don't have any questions in the queue at this moment. We can review some of the most frequently asked questions that we got this week in support, or I can give you guys a minute to get some questions in. I'll just go over our usual intro welcome into this call. So today's Wednesday workshops. Usually on these calls, we go over any questions on how you guys are doing in the system. Usually I know that we have I was told that there's like a new thing where we can add in polls. I don't know if you guys got those. Looks like we do have a poll. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. That way you guys can kind of check that out and check out what that poll is. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but I'll pop that in there. Awesome. We got our first question. Thanks, Wes. Maybe you can touch on inline smart blocks versus regular. How would you implement? Yes, great question. I actually kind of ran into this a little bit earlier today on our call. We talked about emails, text messages, and messaging 101 earlier on our group onboarding call. And I actually had a really great example in my intro email that I can show you guys. So what I'm first going to do is let's go ahead and head over into our templates. Give me one moment. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to adjust my chair. All right, so let's go ahead and head into our email templates and take a peek at an email template that has an inline smart block versus one that's not an inline smart block. So I'm going to click on my 3-line icon right here. I'm going to go into my templates. So it's going to be that hammer icon here. And we'll go into templates. Once we're in templates, obviously we're on email templates. I'm going to take a look at our main under contract email templates. Specifically, I want to look at my intro to buyer's email. On this intro to buyer's email, here I have some merge fields, and then I have this really great smart block. Now, this smart block is a smart block that brings on the inspection date if there is an inspection. Sorry about that. Let me type in that S. So if I highlight where it says that smart block's name, so within the curly brackets, highlight the name. Let me get that. Perfect. We're going to click on SB. It's going to pull up in that smart block. This smart block right here is a smart block that says home inspection. It brings on the home inspection date if there is a date there. So the way that this one works is this is not an inline smart block. This smart block is instead going to create an additional, it's going to create its own line when we apply it to a property. But I like to show it because a lot of the time people think that inline smart blocks are going to be smart blocks that, or the only time you're going to use an inline smart block and you're going to have it on the email, similar to how this one is, it's pressed right up against that closing date, is when it's an inline smart block. You can put in smart blocks in whatever way you want to. The way that this is intended to look, though, is that if there is an inspection, then it brings on this value. And if there's not an inspection, then we don't need to worry about having that come on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the template for this one, and let's go ahead and preview it on a property. Let's go ahead and go to this one. I'm just going to double check that we do actually have an inspection here? Yes. Will there be an inspection? Yes. Perfect. Let's go ahead and head to emails. We're going to say apply template. We're going to grab that template. And then we're going to say apply. Once we apply it, if we scroll down, we can see here that home inspection date came in like this. So this is an example of a regular smart block that comes on and it's going to place itself here. Now, another example, the inline one, let's say, title work, the escrow company involved in the transaction may contact you directly. What if we wanted to share escrow company, or if there was an escrow officer already added to this particular transaction, we could instead say, or we could say, the escrow company or so-and-so, the escrow agent, blah, 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 is going to reach out to you guys. How would we create that inline smart block? Let's go ahead and create one together. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that we have an escrow agent on here. Yes, we do. Perfect. So I'm going to go back over to our emails. I'm just going to have our emails open so I can know what the verbiage says here. But we're going to click on Control S. That's going to open up our smart blocks. I'm going to say add a smart block. And I'm just going to name this escrow agent. I actually already might have one. Let me see if I have escrow agent. Well, I do have an escrow agent one. Let me see what this one does. It's not going to work for the example that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and create a new one. Escrow. I'm going to go ahead and name it inline just to make things easier for myself so we know which one it is. I'm going to go ahead and pop that into our merge field as well and say add. Once we've created it here, we want it to say, again, this one says escrow company or, right? So we can say or, and then let me grab that agent's name. So we're going to click on our merge fields. We're going to click on contact roles. We're going to look for that escrow agent or escrow officer. Here we'll grab the escrow officer's full name. We'll pop in a comma, and then we're going to also throw in their email. Right? So it's just going to be their full name, their email, right? Something as simple as that. Now that we have that built out, we're going to press on our back button here for smart blocks. We're going to locate that escrow smart block again, and I'm going to turn on that inline smart block. Now, typically with smart blocks, we're going to want to add on our condition as well. So the condition with this one is going to be, well, if the property field, if the contact role, escrow officer, exists in the property, then we want this particular verbiage to come on. If they don't exist in the property, then we don't need it. Going back to that smart block, I'm just going to pull it up and just make sure that I have that inline set up on there. Awesome. So that purple switch right here means that it's an inline smart block. What that means is instead of it having a space or on a new page break, it's going to be in line with that particular verbiage. So now that I've got this built out, again, I'm going to want to put it here, right? So let's go ahead and head to our email templates, and we're going to go ahead and insert that smart block. So I'm going to go to email templates, intro to buyer, go ahead and select edit. Here, we're going to scroll down until we see the escrow company. And then here where we're going to put in here's where we're going to put in our smart block. So we're going to click back on those merge fields again. We're going to go to smart block. We can search for our smart block. I'm going to type in escrow. Here's our escrow agent in line. I'm just going to click on that smart block and I'm going to paste it in pressed right up against the company. And I can leave the space after involved if I'd like to. Now for this smart block, because I want to make sure that it's populating correctly, I'm going to go ahead and highlight it really quickly. Because if it is going to have that or, I'm going to need a space before it. So I'm going to highlight the name of it, click on SB. I'm going to click on where it has this smart block name. And I just want to make sure that I have a space before it, but I don't need a space after it. And the reason I don't need a space after it is because I have that space that's right here. So now that I've added in a little space before it, when it enters in, it's not going to be company or, right? It's going to have that space. So it says company space or. Now that we've added that in there, let's go ahead and say back to preview. We'll close out of this. Let's grab that template again. We're going to go ahead and head back to our Ivy Lane where we know we have an escrow officer. We're going to click on email. I'm going to go ahead and delete the email that's in there currently. And then we're going to click on apply template, locate the template we're looking for and say apply. And now, because we have that escrow officer on there, when I scroll down here, it says the escrow company or Jill Goldberg and then comma, there's their email. Involved in the transaction may contact you directly to request specific documentation or information. So this is how you'd be creating those smart blocks. We've got an example here of a smart block coming in, whether or not, you know, are we handling inspections? Yes, then it comes on and brings on the home inspection due date. And then here, an inline smart block that brings on or Jill Goldberg, comma, test.test.com. And it's bringing in those merge fields, right? With that, you know, the merge fields for the escrow officer to bring in that name. Let me know if that kind of showed, you know, I was trying to show from beginning to end how to set up those smart blocks. Are there any like questions about how I went about it or anything with this? Cool. I think the other thing that I like to mention with smart blocks is that there has been a recent feature update to our smart blocks. A lot of you guys are getting really into your smart blocks, building them out, creating them, all that wonderful stuff. So we added in this validation tool here on our email templates. What this validation tool does is it just double checks that the merge fields are good, that the smart blocks are valid, and that the smart blocks do not contain infinite loops. I can try to attempt to create one with infinite loops, but typically they're kind of hard to do unless you're creating a smart block within a smart block within a smart block within a smart block. Typically the ones that I've seen that have been an issue have usually been, give me 1 second, I'm getting a phone call right now. Sorry about that. Not sure if you could hear that on my computer. That was super loud. Awesome. Now, usually smart block infinite loops can happen when we're using smart blocks and we don't have conditional logic associated with them, right? So the smart block is trying to get to the point where it adds on the information, but if it keeps trying to double check, then it can have some issues. So it's like, you know, will there be an inspection? Yes. Awesome. Okay. Bring that on. And the next smart, if there's a smart block within that smart block that says, you know, it brings on maybe the inspector's name. Okay, good. Yeah, it felt like an earthquake for a minute there. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening on my on my thing? Thanks, Todd. You know, a smart block, the infinite smart blocks can happen when we have smart blocks within smart blocks that don't have conditional logic associated with them. And the reason that happens is because the smart block is looking for that conditional logic to tell it what to do next. So really, when you guys are adding in your smart blocks, you really need to be thinking, you know, for example, financial expectations. I would want some sort of condition on here. It doesn't have to be a crazy condition. If you need it to be something that's, you know, very straightforward, contract client type equal to buyer, that's when we need this smart block to come on every single time. Contract client type equal to dual, that's when we need the smart block to come on every time. But whenever we're looking at a smart block and it doesn't have a condition with it, and then you start adding on more smart block groups into it or other smart blocks into it, that's where we start to run into those issues where things start to loop. And it's just because the smart block goes, do we need this? Do we need this? And so it gets itself confused. Looks like we have a follow-up. Can you review multiple conditions while you're on that topic? Yeah, absolutely. So let me click on this smart block responsibilities right here. It's inspections responsibilities. Right now, I've got 2 conditions on it. They're 2 separate conditions, right? So we've got this, will there be an inspection equal to yes, and the inspection period date is not blank. So the inspection period date needs to also have a value. This would be if we wanted to have this and this needs to be met before we can move forward. You could also have it where it has something else with it too. So inspection period date is not blank. If we click on where it says field, that's going to allow us to create a child condition. This is going to make that or. So we could say inspection period date or the home inspection date. Let me see if I can type that in correctly. Date of home inspection is not blank. And so this is what it looks like when we have multiple and we've got those ands here. Will there be an inspection equal to yes? And inspection period date or date of home inspection needs to be filled out. Yeah, exactly. So in this case, this one would have to be equal to yes, and either of these would have to be equal to yes. Right. So either of these would have to have a date in them to be able to have this particular block of information to come on. Yeah, no worries. No worries. I know when we're talking about smart blocks, it can get a little confusing. There's obviously a lot to do with those conditions. So definitely feel free if you guys have any other questions. Alrighty, next question that we have. Can you trigger a field to change when a task is completed or based on a date? For example, changing the contract status from option to under contract after the option period ends. So there's no way to have a field update its value when we check off a task, right? So if for example, this one's currently under contract, let's say I get to the end of my task list and I say, oh, well, actually this was terminated, and I check off this task, there's no way to have that task completion change anything in your fields. The way that I would probably suggest to have that updated is it just kind of depends on what plan you're on, right? If you're on that scale plan, then you're going to be updating your fields primarily the entire time, because the scale plan is going to be reliant on your fields to populate the next tasks that you need to take care of, the next fields that you need to look at, the next emails that need to go out, right? Whenever we're talking about the Pro or the Grow plan, it's always going to be, I need to update my fields and then check off my tasks. Typically, I'm suggesting people review their fields, update their fields, and then complete the tasks that they're doing. So you'll always have to update, under contract, file status. If it's closed or terminated, you're going to need to update that first. Now, we can have tasks bring on fields. So for example, we've got this order home protection and upload paperwork to compliance. So it says order home protection. Maybe when we order that home protection, we need a specific trigger to say, when this is completed, we need to add or remove a field section or a field. So you can technically build it to bring on fields, but it will never be able to fill out fields. And the main reason being is if we think about how the system currently works, we'd have to think about how we would be able to relate that back. Right now, when we check off tasks, those tasks can fire off triggers, but that's really it. And the triggers that it can fire off, again, going back to that view, are emails. It can send out emails, send out text messages. It can add or remove templates. It can add or remove field sections, or it can add or remove a field, but it doesn't update anything. It wouldn't be able to update anything because, again, if we chose, field section, it would be more than just saying a field section, right? We'd have to say, well, this is the field and this is the options. It's a lot of work that goes into that. So it's not something that we have the capabilities of doing right now. I've seen a lot of people actually recently they've been using those triggers to bring on different field sections and fields, especially when they're at a certain point in the process. Sometimes it can be overwhelming when you have a ton of, information here. So for example, we've got our inspection details here, but if there was like a repair, or if we wanted to do a reinspection, maybe you have a specific field section that comes on if you complete a task, or if a task, is checked off. It kind of just depends. Cool. Next question. Can you confirm that if a contact co-op TC is not there, then it will bring in a group of tasks after closing? Would that be done with a trigger? How would I set that up to be done? So it kind of depends. Trying to think of what you're referring to. That if a contact is not there, it will bring in a task. So I think it depends. Once again, it depends on what plan you're on, right? So if you're on the scale plan, you could definitely build out a trigger to say that if a specific, contact role, co-op TC, is not present on the transaction, right? They're not one of the team members on the transaction, then it can bring on additional things. So if you're on that scale plan, you could definitely build out a trigger to say, add or remove this template. I don't really necessarily have let me just do post-closing, say post-closing template here. So you could say add or remove this post-closing template, as long as, and I don't know if I don't think I have that particular person in my account. So I'm just going to type in transaction coordinator. We'll go ahead and say the buyer's transaction coordinator is missing in the property. Then I want this task template to come on. It would bring in tasks to contact our co-op agent and solicit. You're on the Pro plan. So if you're on the Pro plan, then you're not going to be able to use conditional logic like that to bring it on. What I would say instead is when you're filling out that intake form, or even after that intake form submitted, you should have a question asking, is there a co-op agent that you need to send information to? So it would bring in tasks to Contact co-op agent to solicit our services. Yeah, so I would probably have like an additional question. So the way that we would go about that, let me see if I have any intake forms. I don't have any intake forms that were just submitted. But the way that we would probably do that is we would want to have an internal question. So I'm just going to go to new listing. We would want to have an internal question similar to how I have this like client question here. And what I would do is I would have that internally required, right? Something that you're not asking of the agent, but internally your TCs, before they approve the intake form, they review and they say whether or not this is, whether who this is, if there is a co-op agent or not. If there is, then you can have a trigger fire off to bring on that task template, but that task template would come on and it would be on the property waiting in the wings until you got to it. Okay, so there's not a way to have it bring it on after the fact unless you had a specific task with it. So you're either going to build it out that it comes on automatically when you approve that intake form, or you can have it that you have a specific task on your task templates. So if I scroll down to the very bottom of my main buyer's task template, I have a trigger here that says trigger if contract terminated, delete post closing if not needed, right? So if the contract gets terminated, we check off this task, boom, brings on my termination tasks. So you could either have it come on with that intake form, or you could have it as a task that you say, either you're going to delete it or you're going to mark it as completed, and it's going to bring on those additional tasks that you need for that co-op agent. Let me know if that makes sense. I can kind of go through and build it depending on how many more questions we get. Awesome. Awesome. Alrighty. Is there a way to know which user checked off a task if you have multiple users, right? Abilities. This is important. Yeah. And Todd, I really wish there was a better way to go about it, but currently there's not a very good way of seeing who completed what task. We can go to the access or the activity to see what has been done. It'll show you who opened it. So in this case, it shows me opening up this particular property quite a bit, but not necessarily, this is who checked off that task. This is usually why we suggest, if you guys need to have it where each team member only sees their properties, that's usually why we suggest having each team have, those individual users. So for example, in my account, I have community team, implementation team, support team, and then one that needs to be deleted. But when we go to my teams on community team, it's only community. On implementation, it's only implementation. On sales and support, it's only those particular representatives. And the reason we have that way is so that when support needs to come into this account, this test account that we have, and they need to test out some properties and they need to fire off stuff, they need to break things, right? They need to test things. They're only doing it underneath their account, and they don't have to worry about playing with any of the accounts that I use or any of the properties that I use on these live calls. So that's really, the accountability can come down to this. I think it's a great suggestion for sure for us to have something like, like you said, yeah, if there's multiple TCs working on it, I think it would be great to have the ability to have it where, when we check off a task and we go to completed, we could see who's completed these tasks, right? We do have the ability to see whose role was on it, but there's no way to say specifically, was it actually community team that completed this? This is who it was assigned to. It doesn't say who's completed it. I can definitely bring it up with our team. But another thing that would be great too is if you wanted to definitely suggest it in the Idea Lab as well. And then that way, when I bring it up to my team, I can be like, Todd already popped it into the Idea Lab. Is there any way that we can, have this tracking where it says, just as simple as, you go to your tasks, you go to completed, and then here you could see it, maybe underneath here, completed by, something like that. Now, one thing with this though, is that technically anyone can uncomplete a task, right? So all they have to do is uncheck that. And if we go back to our task list, that task is going to be, it's going to come back up, right? And say that it's due. So that's the only thing with that. Yeah, we do have a long list. We are going back through that changelog though. There have been a lot of updates to that changelog. We've been working on it actively, but yeah, it is a long list of things, of different kinds of requests. But that one's, I get why you're saying that you would need that one. I can see how that would be a really a big benefit to a lot of clients. Agent portal roles cannot check off tasks, correct? Correct. agent portal roles cannot check off tasks. They have viewable access. You can give them access to see what tasks are there, depending on how you have your task template set up. Just to touch on that really quickly, the way that you're going to exclude those tasks is by going to the task template, going to that main task, and then selecting this excluded button. By default, all tasks do show, so you'll have to make sure that you come in here and select it. I believe that there's a setting as well. So let me just double check that. I think that there's a setting as well that we can update, but here, as long as that's a dark gray color, that means that that's not going to show in the agent portal. Sometimes this is great because it's not all tasks that you need to exclude. Maybe it's only a couple of them. You know, you want your intro emails to say that that was completed, but maybe they don't need to know that you've coordinated closing details with escrow, right? So maybe you could exclude that task. They don't need to really worry about that one. Let me just go ahead and check out our settings really quickly. So we're going to go down to our gear icon, global settings. Let me go to tasks. Let's task layout. I want to say that there was, you know what? I think it's just notes. I think it's just notes that have it where you can exclude the notes automatically. So right now, by default, notes are excluded. But you can say, you know, maybe you want to share the notes with other people. So this would be where you'd say, don't exclude that note. But that would be an update across the board for all of your, you know, notes that you might add to your tasks. Technically, if you click on this, it'll show all of them versus excluding, and then you choose which ones you want to show. Because I don't think that there's one specifically for tasks. Let me just double check. Okay. Yeah, no, not one for tasks. Cool. I have a sample intake form triggers under trigger templates, and then form triggers on the intake form. Can you explain the difference briefly? Yes, absolutely. So when we're talking about building out open to close, when we're looking at our intake form, most of you guys are going to be altering or customizing the intake form that's already in there, right? However, if you're like, actually, I know what the system is, I'm going to build it from scratch, I feel comfortable with building it from scratch, and you start adding in new intake forms and you build them from scratch right here. Let's say you're building out, you know, a California intake form, a Nevada intake form, you're building out a Washington intake form. So you're building out multiple forms. Instead of you having to go through and build out those triggers every single time, right? Bringing on the task templates that you need, the fields that you need, you can instead have an intake form trigger template that you've built out that brings on just like the basics, right? Usually it's stuff like if it's equal to buyer, then bring on the buyer's task template, or, you know, if inspections are needed, then bring on the inspections. So the sample intake form triggers is going to be just like a template that you can use to apply to an intake form to bring on triggers that, you know, you might need for multiple places. Usually, like I said, I see this with people who are trying to build out accounts that are handling multiple states, or maybe they're handling multiple processes, but they have set number of triggers like this one. Is there a loan equal to yes? Then bring on my loan finance details. Appraisal equal to yes, and bring on my appraisal details. Inspections equal to yes. Home protection, HOA. So when they create that intake form from scratch, let's go ahead and create one. All, and then let me pop in the date. When they create that intake form from scratch, you know, you'll set your time zone. Let me go ahead and create Pacific, and you go to your form triggers. Instead of you having to manually update and add in all of those form triggers, you can apply that template. And now when I apply that template, it brings on those triggers. So you would add the sample to your form triggers to make it run. You'd add those sample triggers as well. It's called sample intake form triggers. You can name it whatever you want. Buyers intake form triggers, field intake form triggers, whatever you want to name it. But the reason you would add it on there is so that you could, instead of you having to create every individual trigger, well, when it's submitted by agent, I want this field section to come on. Let me add it in there, and doing that for every single one of these. Instead, you could have a template that says, well, every single time I'm going to need my finance details, my appraisal details, my inspection details. So it's basically like taking a set of triggers that you would apply to any and all of your intake forms and having it as a template that you can just very quickly apply to that intake form if you need to update them. Sometimes this can be helpful too if you needed to update it. No worries. No worries. Sometimes I see people using the intake form trigger templates here as a way to make sure that they're kind of updating the ones that they've done. I want to say that it updates it instead of duplicates it. So let's play around with that a little bit. Let's go over to our trigger templates. We'll go back into that sample intake form trigger template, and I'm just going to add on a couple more conditions to a couple of these things. So here we've got, is there a loan equal to yes? Let me say that as long as the property field, buyers, finance, oh, actually, you know, let's do financing type. Financing type is not blank, right? I know that my financing type, it has all of these. Oh, actually, there's a cash one in there. Never mind. Is not equal to cash. That's when I need my financing details. If it's equal to cash, then I don't really need it. But as long as there is a loan and the financing type is not equal to cash, then I need my financing details to come on. For appraisal, let's go ahead and add in another value here. I'm just going to go ahead and say the contact role, appraiser, exists in the property, right? So all I'm doing is adding on a couple additional logic to these particular, to these two triggers here. We're going to go back to that intake form I just created. We'll head over to our form triggers, and I'm just going to reapply that template because I want to see, does it update the triggers? Actually, let's go ahead and see right here. So we don't have those new logic on these. Let me go ahead and just apply the template again. See if it duplicates it or if it updates the one that's on here. So it looks like it duplicates it. So just some things that we do, you know, I'm testing out. I'm trying to see, you know, is it going to update the ones that are existing? Would it duplicate them? It looks like it would duplicate them. So that's something for us to kind of keep in mind when we're going through and we're creating these templates, is that when I need to make an alteration, instead of adding it to the template that I already have, maybe I'd want to create a new one with that, with those new changes. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, cool. We've got a couple more. I've been trying to use the upload document feature on intake forms, but it creates an entire new folder groups instead of inserting into an existing folder placeholder. Is a way to have the uploaded files drop into an existing folder rather than create a whole new document section. Upload feature on intake forms. So the upload feature on the intake form. So you're talking about when you're filling out that intake form. I'm going to go ahead and go to our intake form here. Here's our listing one. Let me just pop in some values. Pop in an address. Go ahead and say save and continue. You're referring to when you're putting in documents here, correct? Like if you continue to upload files or add in files here. Yeah. So usually these files would come in as unapproved documents, right? So let's go ahead and actually fill out this intake form and we can kind of talk about best practice with this. So let me just go ahead and say this is a seller. We're listing agreement. It's vacant. No. I'm just going to go ahead and say no to everything so we don't have to fill out any additional information. No. We'll go ahead and say agent will unlock. This is a test. I might want to change the address too, I think. We'll go ahead and say we're going live that date, and then pop in the listing price. Let's go ahead and pop in a different address. Let's do 456 Destiny Drive. That'll work. Cool. Let me find some documents that we're going to upload. Oh, I was hoping this was going to make it smaller. Here we go. Okay, let's go find some documents that we want to upload. Let me see. Okay, so we'll upload this document. Let me see if I can drag and drop it. Perfect, I can. And let's upload this document. And again, if there were any other documents that you needed to upload here, obviously you'd have to ask for them before you get to this page. But here we've got these two documents. We'll say continue. We'll add in our seller. Let's go ahead and say we want to import them from Follow Up Boss because I just like showing this tool. Let's pull in Justin. Cool. Let's grab our listing agent. We'll go ahead and select from our contacts. We'll go ahead and say this is Jill. Let's go ahead and say this one. And we'll say continue. We're reviewing the information. All looks good. And we say submit. When that intake form is submitted, we can go ahead and close out of this if we'd like to, or we can email in more documents. I can do that too. So I can grab that email page right here, and I might email in some more documents after we're done reviewing it. But when we're actually looking at that intake form, so I'm going to go to submitted. Here's that intake form. When we open up that intake form, here's those fields that I was talking about where we can make them internally required. So earlier you guys had asked, you know, Shonda, I think you had asked, you know, how can we have it that a specific task template comes on? So here you could ask your internal users, well, is there a co-op agent? Who is the agent? Here I could say, okay, well, it's Kelly. That's my co-op agent. And then here, again, you're just entering in the other values that you need to. We can skip over these for now. But when we're looking at our documents, it'll depend on when you have your document templates come on, right? So these 2 documents are going to come on as unapproved documents. You're going to want to review them. If I just approve this, it's going to pop them into whatever folders that it creates, right? However, if I click on the document itself, I've reviewed it. Yeah, it looks great. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to click where it says file placeholder. And what this is going to do is that's going to be all of the documents that are currently on your actual, underneath here. So here I can scroll down. Here's my listing agreement. That's what that one is. I can click on placeholder again. And that's not the listing agreement. That's actually the MLS printout. I can approve both of these documents. And instead of them going into additional folders, they're going to put themselves into their placeholders. Okay. So it's just a matter of like, when are we placing them in there? Here now I can remove the blank folders. So that way I don't have to, reassign them or anything. They're gone now. And now I have down here, my listing agreement. That's my listing agreement, the one that I just popped into the placeholder. So if you're finding that when you're going through your approval process, again, I have not approved this intake form yet. If when you're going through your approval process, you're like, Hannah, I don't have, my document templates aren't populating yet. They're only populating until after, right? If you're having it that your document templates populate after approval, then it's going to approve those particular documents. Then you have to drag and drop them into their placeholders. So I see a lot of people having their document triggers set up as when the form is submitted. That's when it brings on these document folders that I need immediately. Typically, the folders that we need immediately are going to be like your listing documents or your under contract documents, right? But the things like HOA or inspection or seller disclosure addendum, those kind of things, you might need that afterwards, or even appraisal. You might need that after approval, right? It's going to be have trigger on, bring on, when it's submitted by the agent, have that particular document template that has those documents that you need to file away right away. Looks like we've got a follow up. Okay, this looks like what I was hoping for. Maybe I was just moving to the wrong place. Yeah, so I think that what it is it's going to be just a matter of double checking that intake form. So we're going to go down into our intake form, and I'm going to go ahead and go to like our buyer side. Going into our buyer side, form triggers, I'm just going to click on this. And then what I'm going to grab is this where it says form submitted by agent. And I'm just going to see all the triggers that I have form submitted by agent. And there might be some that I need to update, right? So I got to the end of the line and I only saw my fields getting triggered. After that, usually when we're talking about our templates, usually we have them trigger after the fact. But again, here's my main purchase contracts. It's baked in with our task templates. I can, I believe I can clone this trigger. Creates an exact replica of it. We can go ahead and click on the options. Here's an exact replica of this trigger. And what I can do here is I can click on one of the triggers, remove the task template, click on the other trigger, remove the documents. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the one that brings on the documents. So here are those documents: purchase agreement, title escrow. Those are going to be the documents that you get right away, right when you are filling out that intake form, or whoever's filling out that intake form. And we're going to change this to submitted by the agent. And then this other one, this can stay as form approved internally. And so what this is going to do now is that when I fill out this buyer's intake form, these 2 document templates are going to come onto that property right away, right when it's submitted by the agent, as long as it meets the conditions. And then this task template is only going to apply when it's been approved internally. Okay. So all I did there was click on clone, cloned it, removed the excess, swapped this to form as submitted by agent, and boom, now we're good. So that's what I would probably do, Wes. I would double check to see, when are my document templates coming on? Are they coming on when I submitted them by the, when they're submitted, or are they coming on after they're approved? And, like I said, sometimes there's going to be document templates that you don't need right away. If we scroll down here, we've got this HOA one. You might not need that right away, right? You're going to need that later on down the process. You don't need to file away those documents right away, unless you're receiving those documents right away. If you're receiving the documents right away, that's where I would probably say, okay, well, then we need to either change this to form as submitted, when the form is submitted, or, create a specific, a trigger for it, a specific trigger for it. Cool. Awesome. Alrighty. Next question. We have 2 admin users and need to use certain emails from each. Both of our accounts have been synced to Microsoft emails. Why am I only seeing my email as sent from option when creating an email trigger? So it kind of depends. Heather, if those people are logged in, right? So here we would need those admins would need to have their own user seats on here. So community's got their own user seat. This is admin 1, this is admin 2. If you're logged in and you're reviewing them, when I go to this property, if it's assigned to me, right, the community team, when I go to look at my addresses underneath here, I'm only going to see the ones that are on underneath that particular one. If I go to a different property, I don't know if I have any that I can go to. Maybe this one's not nope, this one's assigned to me for sure. Let's see, William Street. I don't think this one's assigned to me. It is assigned to me. Let me see if I have any other ones. If not, I can change who it's assigned to. I just won't be able to see it anymore. Let's go ahead and impersonate one of my other team members. We'll go ahead and go into implementation team. Fingers crossed that they have properties. And if they don't, we'll go ahead and hop out. We'll go into the support team. Cool. Implementation team does have a property. Here's a property right here. This property is assigned to implementation team. So when I go to review their defaults and settings, I'm going to see their emails there. So what you might need to do is just double check and see, okay, well, is this property assigned to that admin? Right? And then you can see who's that default send from. The other thing you'll want to double check is that when you're logged in as that admin, you'll want to make sure that it's their email connected underneath their, the Microsoft API to show up their send from email addresses. Whenever we're looking at our email addresses, so here's an example. We've got my coworker, Emily, connected here. If you need to have another kind of email from here connected, we're starting to talk about aliases. Right. So you might need to add in a Microsoft alias. And I think it's just as simple as looking for Microsoft alias email. Cool. This is the one that I would use to go through and figure out how to add on that particular alias into that email in case you need to have it in there. But each user will need to have their own login into Open to Close, and they're going to need to have their email addresses connected underneath that API underneath Microsoft. Let me go ahead and grab that link here. I'm going to post it. Kelly, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with the chat, I think you should have access to doing that. Okay, cool. So it would be so there's going to be a main user, right? That's associated with that property. Whoever the main user is going to be assigned to that's going to be that specific team with that specific user. Other people can have access to that property if they're on the same team. But when it comes to sending out those emails, it's going to be dependent on whoever that specific user is. So you can't always alter it if you need to send it from a specific email. But like I said, usually I see people using the aliases to say that they want to send it from a different email. They have it as an alias that they send out. So for example, in my account right now, if we go to my apps and API, I have a couple aliases in here underneath my Google that say, this one says Hannah Hoxie. This one says Hannah Hoxie at Workflow Boss, Hannah at Open to Close. I could add in another alias that's called, team at Open to Close into my Google account. I could make sure that Emily, my coworker who's also on this account, also has team at Open to Close as an alias. And then that way, when they're going to send out emails, if they're helping out me and they're sending out emails on my behalf, when they go to send out those emails, instead of having, it say my name, they could select the alias instead. Kind of a unique setup. A lot of people I see actually doing that though, nowadays, especially when they have it that they have multiple people working on it. Yeah, no worries. If you need some additional help like setting that up, definitely feel free to reach out. I'd love to be able to kind of go through that with someone. So you would set up the aliases in Google Workspace first and then add them to Open to Close. You can add it into Open to Close after the fact too. Like if I go into my Google right now, let me go ahead and see if I can pull this open since, we don't have too many questions. So I think I think we're safe to go through this and do this. Let me go into my Google right now. Go into my settings, go over to, where are my aliases in here? Here we go. Here's an alias. Let me add in one. I'm just gonna add in a silly one. Okay. So I'm gonna I'm gonna add in a silly one. I'm gonna say that I want to do this. I'm gonna close it. It's gonna be a little silly. There we go. I've added one in. Now, when we've added in an alias after the fact, what we can do here is once we've added that alias in, right? My Google's connected. My addresses are connected. What I can do from here is I can say resync email addresses. Okay, it looks like it's not going to bring it on. The email that I had added in was one that it needs to be verified to be able to use it. The email verification is something that I might not be able to go through and do just because it's I don't think it's going to bring it on because it's not technically my name. I put in banana. Let me see if I can add in a different alias that will show up, one that doesn't need to get verified. Let's see if we can do this. Here, let me see. Actually looks like it's not letting me add in an alias at all unless I'm unless I can verify that that email actually belongs to me. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you can verify that the email address belongs to you. I think that this is probably a new setting that that Google did. Let's see if I can disconnect and reconnect it though, and see if that email comes in there. Because if it doesn't come in this way, we can always disconnect and reconnect the API and double check to see if that adds in. Now, obviously, when you disconnect and reconnect, you're going to need to clear your cache for this. We have a specific link in support that they can give you guys. So you'll want to clear your cache, make sure you delete the authorization, and then reauthorize it. So basically, if I follow those steps, I delete that authorization. Here now, I connect it. Let's see if it brings in that email address now. Cool. Back to apps and API addresses. Here we go. Banana ad open to close. So it looks like it brought it in after I disconnected it completely and brought it back on completely. But you can say that you want. So let me see. It sounds like you're saying multiple Google workspaces. Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I was saying. So banana ad open to close is something that if again, if my coworker Emily had set that up as an alias in her account as well, technically she could add it into hers. And then when we're looking at that send from, right, and we're saying, you know, I want to send an email, Emily could, instead of choosing her own email or my email, if it's assigned to me, she could choose that banana at or that, you know, team at open to close. Yeah. So you can technically share that across the board like that too, as long as they haven't made any updates recently. I know Google's been going through and making a ton of security updates. So if they made an update like that, it might be different. But, you know, just like how when you guys email into support at open to close, it comes to us in our support channel. That's one of our Google, you know, that's a Google alias technically for us that we use to be able to get your guys' emails. Cool. Alrighty. Any other questions? We are at 46 minutes. I can review, like I said, some of those frequently asked questions that we had in our support if you guys are interested. But I can wait, like, let's wait like a couple minutes, see if, or not a couple minutes, let's wait for like 20 seconds, see if you guys have any other questions. And let me look at this API and see, or let me look at the list of FAQs for this week and see which one might be good. Oh, okay. Are task conditions only with scale account, or is that just trigger conditions? Task conditions are only available with that scale account. So usually if you guys are like, wait, does that come with that? What I suggest is going to our pricing page. So open to close, click on pricing page here. I'm going to do Control F and I'm going to type in task conditions, if I can spell it right, and press enter. And here you can see task conditions are only on here, but we can also go down to where it has tasks. Here's tasks. And we can see, you know, if any, I don't know if task, here we go. Task trigger conditions, they're only available on that scale account. Cool. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. It's a little complicated here. So yeah, when we're talking about task trigger, I know, and trigger is like such a word that we use in a lot of different places. So I am on the scale account, right? Right now, my account is on the scale account. When I go to my tasks, when I open up my task templates, I can add on conditions onto this task. I can add conditions onto my task triggers because I'm on the Scale account. If you guys are on the Pro account, the main places that you're going to be adding in your conditions are going to be on your intake form, and it's going to be on your smart blocks. Those are the two places that you're mainly adding in conditions. I don't believe there's any other place that you'd be able to add in conditions. Correct me if I'm wrong, if Kelly, if you know otherwise, but I believe I'm right on that. I think it's only Grow and Pro. You're going to have access to adding conditions onto your smart blocks and to your intake forms. But once you get to that Scale account, you can basically add conditions to emails, email triggers, you know, obviously the property triggers, so on and so forth. Cool. Well, some frequent asked questions that we've gotten. A lot of them are regarding emails. I don't know if anyone else is having any struggles with their emails. Again, a lot of the time it's, you know, we need a whitelist, we need to disconnect, and we need to refresh that connection. Let me see if I can grab that link that our team uses all the time. I feel like I bookmarked it somewhere. Ah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me, Kelly. So we've kind of referred to it before as like task locking. Task locking is the same thing as adding on conditions to those tasks within a task template. So that's kind of, you know, we use it like those two terms interchangeably. Usually we use it like that. So that way we can say, you know, if you want to lock up the task, you can create a condition on it, right? On that specific task. This is task locking. It has that little lock icon. It says note one condition. And then task trigger conditions could be the conditions that go on to the emails themselves, right? Because these emails, these triggers can also have conditions on them as well. So yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that with me, Kelly. Cool. So let me see this. I want to see if I can find that link for you guys. The one that I was talking about, that to clear out your Google. Cool. I found the link. I found the link. Awesome. So the link that we're looking for, if we need to clear, you know, if we need to clear out that connection, because right now my Google, I know that my Google connection is not going to work. If I go to inbox, right, it's going to load it and it's going to throw me this error, right? If I go to a property and I try to send out an email, let's go ahead and try to send out an email. We'll go to emails. We'll go ahead and leave this here. This is fine. Let me change this to an actual person that can receive the email. Let's do Jill. Actually, let's do Kelly at open to close. Oh, I didn't spell open right. Open to close.com. Press select this one. Here we go. We're going to send out this email to Kelly. We're going to send it from my Google. When I go to try to send out this email, if I run into this error where it doesn't actually send out, or let's see if it actually did send out. That'd be great if it did. Oh, I think it sent it out via no API. That's so funny. I knew it was going to do that. Okay, let's try that again. See if we can get it to go out via the API. Let's go ahead and grab this one. Once again, I'm just going to add Kelly onto here. Oh, it's actually sending to that one. Let me update who we're sending it from. We're sending it from the Google. Go ahead and choose that banana one that we just chose, and we'll try to send it to Hannah at open to close. We'll go ahead and say send. We're going to hit an error, API client not found. So if you run into this error, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to disconnect. So we'll go ahead and disconnect here first, disconnecting your Google. If you're a Google user, you're going to want to reach out to support to get this link. This link is just showing your third party, whatever has access to your Google through third party. We're going to want to go down to open to close and click on it. We're going to want to scroll down to the bottom and we're going to say delete all connections you have with open to close. We're going to say yes, confirm. Now, next, we can go ahead and say the back button if we'd like to. We can close out of this window. Then we're going to go back into open to close. We're going to click on authorize, skip all of these steps. We're going to go straight to connect and say connect. Now, obviously, it's going to ask you to log into your open to close account or to your Google account. We're going to click on that Google account. Once we've made that connection, here's asking, are you sure you want to give them connection to this? I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, they're a trusted account. Let me have connection. Once I go through and do that, now if we're looking at open to close and we go over to our email inbox, you guys are going to see my emails in here. I have a lot. you're going to come over here and you can send out emails now from that API. So again, we're going to go to API. Here's from Banana at Open to Close. We'll go ahead and change that to just Hannah Hoxie at Open to Close, sending to Hannah at Open to Close. It's just going to go to my inbox and we'll say send, and then we won't have that issue anymore. It's going to send out that email. Cool. So we can go to sent. We can see this one was sent through via Google, and then this one was sent through no API. So that's how we would go through and we'd reset that Google connection. Now, in my case, I don't necessarily need my emails to show up in this account. So for me to be able to use it in a testing environment to show you guys kind of the way that this system works, but not, reveal all of my personal client data, I can go ahead and just reconnect it. And then what that's going to do is if I disconnect and reconnect it, it's going to need to get cleared out again. But if I don't clear it out, it'll just, it'll just say that the connection's technically broken. So now that I've disconnected, reconnected it again, if I go to emails, it's not going to be able to load them in because it's going to throw that error again. Okay. So if you guys ever run into this kind of error, all you need to do is clear out that cache. You need to clear out your, the connections. Are you able to see images and emails when viewing them in Open to Close? I cannot. I don't know. Actually, I would need to test it. So I need to go through those steps again and double check it and test it on my end. If you cannot see them, then most likely you can't. I want you guys to think of this inbox as a window into your inbox, but it doesn't function as a fully, functional inbox like Google Inbox does. So there could be issues with viewing images. You might need to download the images to view them. You should have the ability to at least click on them and download them to your computer to then view the images. But yeah, it could be something that you can't see. I'd have to check it on my end. I'll have to do some testing after this and let you know whether or not that's something that we can do or not. Great question though. Let's see if I have anyone that knows that. So yeah, I can understand how it wouldn't work appropriately for incoming emails. Great for outgoing emails, but the files don't display correctly either. Yeah, it really depends for the files, right? Because usually when we're sending out our emails, like we're sending them out. I mean, if it's like your signature and you've got images in there, when you go to send out that email, and you review that email, if you preview it, I mean, this is not a good example. This is one that was scheduled. Let me go to sent. When you go to preview it here, it should pull in the imagery correctly here. It might not be exactly correct. Again, there might be some formatting issue that's going on there. But when it comes to sending out those files, at least you should have that as like an attachment at the bottom. And again, if you need to review it, what I would suggest is going to the documents and clicking on that file that you need to review versus going to the emails, seeing what was sent, and then trying to open up the email from there. Cause I think it might have you download it. I don't know if it'll preview it here. But you can definitely see which, again, I'm circling an imaginary thing. I'm referring to inbound emails. If they're all attachments, they all display the same. I know that there was something with inbound emails with attachments that came in looking really, really nice. But I don't have a great example of it, Wes. So let me create, if you've already submitted a ticket with support, I'll go ahead and see if I can find that ticket. And I'll see what they've said, because they might have already given you an answer and some direction on it. But I want to, I'll see if I can record a Loom for you that shows what that email connection looks like. And then, maybe on next Wednesday workshop, if anyone else has any questions on like what that connection looks like, we can pull it up. The only reason I'm not doing it now is because, again, I have client emails in there. And so I have to keep some confidentiality with that. So it's the only reason why I'm not showing it right now. But I know that there's a way to like click on it and then like associate it with a property. So yeah. Can you not use the calendar function unless it's connected to Google? So it just depends. So when we're connected to Google, if you're trying to use this calendar here, this needs to be connected to Google. This will only be available as well if that calendar is public, right? Because again, this calendar view within Open to Close, think of it as like a window. It's not necessarily something that's going to be able to keep in all of the security that you need. So you would have to say, make it public so that it could then come into Open to Close. As far as for sending out, yeah, thanks for coming, Todd. As far as for sending out invitations to it, you technically can have a Microsoft calendar connected. You can have that Microsoft connected. It's just a matter of, selecting, which calendar you want to sync it with. So here you can see I've got quite a number of calendars here. As long as you have that connected, then you'll be able to select that calendar from here and say sync. And what that's going to do is it's going to send out those invites to those, party members. If you have party members selected, I've kind of showed this before, but, again, include on all calendar invites. If I select Jill and then I go and I select my calendar, what that's going to do is it's going to send her an invite for all of them. So I can click on Hannah, say sync. And what that's going to do is it's going to take any dates that I have that little purple icon selected on. So if I go to my field editor here, as long as that purple icon selected on it, when I go to send out those calendar invites on the property, it's going to send that out as an invite. No worries. Thanks for joining today, Wes. We are at the end of time. Heather, let me know if that makes sense. As far as for it, again, like I said, if we want to see the calendar in here, like a window, that calendar is going to need to be made public. You're going to need to make sure that you're connected to your Google. We only connect with Google when it comes to calendar. We cannot connect to Microsoft. But when it comes to actually sending out those invites, since you're using Microsoft, you can technically still say, as long as the calendar is available, you can select a calendar to sync here. And you can also say that you want to send it out to specific party members as well. Awesome, guys. Lots of great questions. Thanks, guys, for asking everything that you did ask. I appreciate you guys and I appreciate you hanging out. Yeah, no worries. Let me know if there's anything else that comes up. You're definitely welcome to reach out to us in support. So let me give my little spiel that I do at the end of every single Wednesday workshop. If you guys have any other questions that we didn't cover, definitely feel free to reach out to us. If you guys are looking for this recording, it takes about 48 hours for us to process it, get it uploaded to YouTube so that you guys can review it. If you're looking for more webinars like this, head over to our Open to Close website, click on the Learn tab, head over to Webinars, then you'll see the list of webinars that we have coming up. Today, we covered emails and text messages. We did Wednesday workshop. Next Tuesday, we're going to go over Contacts 101. And then next Wednesday, we're going to go over Tasks and Triggers 101. Right? And then we'll also have our Wednesday workshop as usual. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you then.